Give the people what they want.
Welcome to Banking on Community, the podcast for community bankers. I'm Saxon Prater.
And I'm Tara Schultz.
And I'm Brett Glover. It's good to be back with you guys. I missed out the last time. Tara, you've got a new look. Saxon, you got a new look. I'm feeling a little bit left out. I looked exactly the same.
Where's yours, Brett? Come on, give the people what they want.
Next time around, I'll figure it out. But you guys are looking good. It's so good to be back together with you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
likewise.
Good to have
We
you back.
missed you the last time, and glad to have you back. Earlier, speaking of a look transformation, I've heard the phrase "frosted tips" going around. Specifically regarding your hair, I can imagine it now. The blonde in the front. Think about it.
Yes, this is a wonderful idea. I don't know whose it was, but I'm here for it.
I'll look into it. I have very few tips left to frost, but we'll see. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, hey guys, listeners, as you can tell, this is going to be a little bit of a more kind of freewheeling conversation. I was kind of calling it our back to school episode, where we're getting back into the rhythm. This has been a crazy summer. There's a ton of stuff to talk about, and so we thought we'd get our core group back together and have a conversation about it.
Oh my gosh, back to school. You are like speaking my language now. Let's get them. Let's get them back to school. I desire a routine.
Yeah, actually, I'm not dealing with back to school this year for the first time ever. My neighborhood has been quite busy the last 2 days as school started back here yesterday. But for the first time, I don't have kids going to school here locally. But you mentioned a crazy summer. There has been a lot going on, both personally and professionally. On the personal side, I can tell some stories on myself. Both my kids are now in the Denver metro area. One post-college and one has moved out there and is going to school. But went to visit them recently for my son's 20th birthday. Had an amazing time. Turned it into a long weekend. Get ready for the flight back and go to check in. The big bag now at Southwest. They've made some changes. That's been fun. And the lady says, well, I need your ID to check that bag. I don't usually ever check bags, guys. I can pack for 10 days in my carry-on. So I was checking my wife's bag so we get to fly it free. And instantly I knew my ID wasn't with me. Long story short, I had some very intimate conversations with TSA in Denver. It was not pleasant. Do not leave your ID. I am still actually waiting on UPS to get me my wallet because it was sent to Iowa and then they've lost track of it. So that's my most recent crazy story that's going on this summer.
How do we even verify you are who you say you are, Brett?
Yeah.
That's too long a story for this podcast, but basically they work with another government agency and get you on the phone and they ask you questions and I assure you they know everything. And as long as you answer the questions right, you can get on the flight. But it was, and then, I got a little private pat down service. So
Love it.
Super fun.
That happened to me once, Brett. And thankfully, randomly, I had a firing range, like a shooting range card in my bag. That's the only ID I had on me. Not a FOID card, nothing really legal, but a shooting range. So for some odd reason, they let me through.
That's good to know.
Tara, what about you? What have you been up to this summer?
Oh my gosh. Just wrapped up a little Florida beach time to unwind before the mass chaos of travel season that's starting next week. And, just as important, as I mentioned, school returns next week, and I can't wait. I think if I had a penny for every time I was asked to DoorDash food or DoorDash snacks, I think I'd be able to get the Morgan Wallen pit tickets that we all know I really want, but I just simply can't justify. But in all seriousness, this one really cool thing about this summer has been giving my oldest son, who's 13, more freedom. And with that, it comes with, the earning, the spending. He's really good at that part. Probably gets that from me. The learning more about financial services. And he's, up until this point, really lived in a world of cash until this year. So now he's managing a digital wallet. He's already tried to throw the physical card away, of course. Like that tells you exactly what you would expect out of that gin. But the funniest moment was when he was adding his new debit card to his Apple Wallet. He had an issue and it said, contact your card issuer. So he called me and he wouldn't stop calling me. So I answered. I said, why are you calling me about this now? You know that I'm in the middle of work. And he said, well, they told me to contact the card issuer. You're my card issuer.
Make it work, Mom.
So we have a ways to go on the old financial services education literacy with him, but it's been a good start of a summer and some pretty fun moments. What's that?
If he gets like jobs and stuff, he will already have a little bit of experience with all this stuff, and it'll get easier and easier.
Absolutely. What about you?
You know, I've been traveling a lot this summer. We visited some family in California. My wife's family. We visited my family in Knoxville. Saw both their new minor league stadium in Knoxville, Tennessee, which was awesome, as well as their 4th of July. So that was pretty fun. And one of my oldest friends got married at the beginning of the summer. I've known him since 1st grade. So it's finally our little boy is growing up. We all joked. And then here in Nashville, actually, we just had our big tomato festival. So that was a whole big to-do. Tomatoes everywhere. There's, the Bloody Marys are flowing, as you can imagine. Tara,
I've never heard about this festival, but I'm interested.
Well, speaking of festivals, I heard that you experienced some a rodeo recently, something like that.
I did. I'm a big fan of rodeos now, and there's one that comes here often now, a few times a year. And my twins, they found out about mutton busting, which is, if you're not familiar, we'll have our editors splash up a photo here in a second. But mutton busting is kind of a little entry, a safe entry to the rodeo world. And my 6-year-old twins were adamant that they wanted to try the mutton busting competition at the recent one. So it was hilarious. It was a learning experience, and they're definitely they've got a little dose of competition in them as well. They came out kind of beat up, but they told me that night, they're like, "We think we figured it out. I just want to do it one more time." So, but it's where the kids hold on to the sheep as hard as they can while the sheep runs out of the gate, and it's comical. But I told them never again. So.
Nice. So if you're keeping track, so far we've covered frosted tips, mutton busting, and we got to do this in threes. My wife actually invented a new term. We're hoping to get this trending, so maybe people can help us. We have embraced, instead of empty nesting, open nesting. And so, both my kids are out of the house. We've tried this once before. That lasted not very long, and one of them returned and is now on the second go around, which is totally fine. But after we moved my son in and got him settled, I said, well, we're empty nesting again. And she was like, no, we're open nesting, because we may need to open the house back up at some point in the future. So there, open nesting, get it trending, folks. Just, give my wife some credit. But
just like open banking, there's a flow back and forth of information.
Yeah, we've covered some good ground here. We could call it quits, but I feel like there's some stuff happening in our industry this summer too that can also be labeled as crazy. So let's jump into that.
Yeah, 100%. So we have a kind of freewheeling agenda on our hands. We're going to talk about some industry headlines, go through some of the kind of chaos of this summer. It has been both a hot summer and there's been just a ton of news. We're going to talk a little bit about what's new at CSI, spotlight a couple standout banks, and we'll just kind of see where the conversation takes us from there. How's that sound, guys?
Yeah.
Let's roll.
Let's mutton
start with the news.
The rodeo terms.
By the way, actually, now that she said that, she mentioned it earlier. Many of you might be just listening to us at home, but you can see us on video. So if you want to see my new buzz cut, it's okay if you don't. Just assume that it's as pristine and perfect as a buzz cut can be. But if you want to see Tara's daughter mutton busting, riding a sheep or goat, it's a sheep, right? Stay tuned, because we're going to try to get that up here in post so you can see it either on YouTube, our website, or social media. So let's talk about some news. One of the first ones that we should talk about, because we've talked about it before, is the announcement that the CFPB is going to replace the 1033 rule. So that rule is now, for lack of a better way to put it right now, defunct. Guys, what do you make of this?
I think the theme of the last 9 months has been a bit of regulatory whiplash. I think, obviously we live in a world where financial institutions, they just desire the guidance and clarity to be able to operate and compete safely and fairly. And they really want to do that and desire to do that on a level playing field. So we had October, it was green light go, 1033 was passed, Chopra had his 90 minutes of fame. The podcast, we had Jordan Wright on from Atomic, and he did an excellent job covering all of the critical aspects of the different parties affected by 1033. Then we had the 2025 complete retraction and reworking. And prior to that retraction, we were all really stuck in limbo. And I was asked to join a panel at Bank Tech Ventures annual summit for bankers in Chicago, where this was really the center of the discussion at that point in time in May. And we had a lot of discussion around the fact that while official guidance is really nice, consumer expectations and risk, that'll drive the need for better and complete data access becoming a critical priority and ongoing priority for financial institutions. And then now you just throw on top the mass chaos of discussions happening now with the recent news of JP Morgan charging aggregators for that data access. It's been a bit of mayhem.
For sure. Fortunately, unfortunately, I think some of the folks in the industry and our bankers, as I have conversations with them, there is surprise but not shock, right? We got some confirmation and some solid stuff, and then there was a shift in that. So, but I completely agree with you. I think those that were already thinking and planning and innovating, that hasn't stopped. But obviously, it was a little bit shock to the system, and now there's just a lot of noise and some of the major players and what they're doing and decisions. So it's definitely been an interesting hot topic for sure, that I'm sure will continue well past this summer, into the fall and into 2026 as well.
Yeah, and I think it was a bold move by JP Morgan, what they came out to state. And I'm not at all saying that it's a wrong move. There's a lot that goes into that, and it's not simple. There's multi-layers of data. There's high investments of infrastructure to do it safely and securely with the right consumer visibility. There's just a variety of use cases and how it's being utilized, not only for the benefit of the consumer, but likely a lot of times too for the benefit of the fintech. So it is, like you said, Brett, it's complicated. It needs to be balanced. It needs to be beneficial for all. And it desperately needs once and for all correction. But here we are, some market-driven madness.
Yeah, you mentioned the kind of regulatory whiplash of we were planning on one thing, and there's obviously changes with a new administration. I can't imagine if you're a banker, you're working in some of these compliance areas, and you're starting to put processes into place to kind of adhere to that, what kind of limbo state you feel like, not knowing exactly how long the rules are going to be as they are. You know what I mean? There could be shifts in Congress over the next couple of years or not, and that might dictate how a lot of these sorts of topics go.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, there is some familiarity with that, right? It's not necessarily, the first time that clear direction has been given and then walked back and or then changed later. And so, again, like I said before, fortunately, unfortunately, there is some familiarity with that. But I do agree with Tara's statement that, consumer behavior is going to be pivotal here because, folks that aren't in the day-to-day of the industry and what's happening with regulation or even know what the rule is, much less the number and what the regulations are, it is definitely not going to stop that. Consumers are expecting that seamless experience. And if they want a new situation with a new provider, hey, how can you help me do that? And I think that's where folks in the industry are focused right now while we do wait for some of that final regulation and guidance to continue to work itself out.
Yeah. And we talked about it with 1033. Like that rule didn't even apply to every bank. There was a threshold of the banks that it actually applied to. And we had discussed at the time, like ultimately it's going to be a consumer driven thing. All right. So obviously open banking, data sharing, all that's one giant topic. I'm going to switch over to the Genius Act. So this was legislation that just came out, which creates the first ever federal regulatory system for stablecoins. Let's actually start on a very basic question. Can you guys help me understand what stablecoins are?
Terry, you're wearing the glasses. I feel like you should take this one.
Stablecoins are digital assets backed by blockchain technology.
And pegged to the US dollar.
And pegged to the US dollar. Yeah, I cannot name a single topic that I have received more incoming questions on than this one. And yes, even AI. Again, speaking of just wanting regulatory support and clarity on what's possible on the playing fields, on not being level at all, of banks being handcuffed with no option to participate. And yes, I do know Bitcoin is different, but at the time, in let's say it was 2021, many banks wanted in on that action. They wanted to buy, sell crypto through digital. Many made moves, including us with NYDIG, with some of our banks. And then later came the regulatory hammer. It was a strong halt to community banks, leaving them yet again on an unlevel playing field with fintech. So I'm excited about this framework, the stablecoin framework, and the pending regulatory clarity. It's exciting. There's no denying that this will be a critical piece to the future of finance. This isn't saying it's going to replace banks. And while all of this will take time to sort out the most feasible use cases beyond cross-border, more regulatory clarity, I think many financial institutions are doing the right thing. They're asking a lot of questions. They're getting educated on what this means for them. What is this threat on deposit outflow? What options do they have? How will they be supported? And because of all of that activity and discussion from our customers, from market discussions, just a quick note to stay tuned for an upcoming webinar from CSI for our customers in September. And it'll be 100% centered around stablecoin education, CSI's perspective and stance, et cetera. So more to come on that.
Definitely been a hot topic. I've had several really interesting conversations with several customers who are wanting to innovate in that and curious about what our strategies are, but also understand, which I think is an important note, that there is a difference between legislation and regulation. And so while those pieces are yet to be seen, there is definitely a lot of interest in the use cases. And Terry, you mentioned like cross-border payments. I think everybody realizes at this point that real-time payments are the future, but there are multiple things to consider there with the use cases, how the technology consists. Stable coins, definitely viable. It's exciting, but definitely lots of questions still. What will the regulation look like? What is the protection? What does fraud prevention look like, for example? So like most things that are coming and are exciting, like it's here, it's now, the conversations are happening. Innovation is happening. It's exciting, and a lot to play itself out as well.
Yeah, and I think what's great about the timing here is that all banks are starting at the same time, on the same field, with the same regulation. So that's exciting because there's not a lot of times that happens. And I think looking back to early stage Bitcoin, that was proof in the pudding that not everybody was going to start at the same time. And that's applicable for most technologies and, payment modernization methods. So it's exciting.
I think that's a great point. I hadn't really thought about that, but it's every once in a while, there's something that just like is a big moment. And I feel like this is where we're at one of these as well. I was reading through what the description was as listed on the White House website. And it says the Genius Act requires 100% reserve backing with liquid assets like US dollars or short-term treasuries, and requires issuers to make monthly public disclosures of composition of reserves. They also say some things that Brett alluded to, like stablecoin issuers must comply with strict marketing rules to protect consumers from deceptive practices. It aligns state and federal stablecoin frameworks, ensuring fair and consistent regulation. And in the event of insolvency of a stablecoin issuer, the Genius Act prioritizes stablecoins holders' claims over all of their creditors, ensuring a final backstop of consumer protection. So that is a lot of information that covers a lot of ground, and we're definitely going to be seeing a lot more news related to that coming out in the next few months.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk now about the spike in activity surge around M&A in our space. Obviously, we're off to the races now. What we have expected to come to fruition on a lot of pent-up demand is we're seeing that now. July was a hot month, a surge of activity at 26 deals, which that's a monthly record since 2021. So obviously there's a lot of pent-up demand there. There's improving valuations. There's more regulatory support around that. And I think a good example of that is just looking at how quickly the most recent deal of Columbia and Pacific Premier, they announced in April, they're already approved, and they're ready for an August 31st close. So not every one of them will move at that pace, but that's a clip unheard of in recent years. So that's interesting to see. But I don't see the Q3 pace slowing down dramatically at year end or the Q4. And it may also bring some fintech acquisitions of banks getting into the game, which obviously signals strategic urgency and gaining that asset that they need. One thing I love seeing a spike in is de novo activity again, and growth in that space. So quick shout out to our friends down in Miami at Bank Miami. They launched 5 months ago, and I just saw on LinkedIn yesterday that they've already achieved their first milestone, achieving the $100 million mark. So that's awesome. Congratulations on reaching that asset threshold and already early and successful growth. So love seeing that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. No, those folks are doing some great things, and love to see the de novo activity. I think it's absolutely crucial and important, to our industry and to the community banking space. And I have also seen, I haven't had, those number of requests and conversations that have been coming my way the past few months in a really long time. So it is definitely heating up. That's a fair way to say it. As the weather has this summer, so has that activity. And I think a lot of community financial institutions are definitely looking at that currently and making plans around that on their future growth strategy and a way to propel them forward. So I definitely see the rest of 2025 continuing in that same manner.
Brett, when you have these conversations with bankers, what's the temperature check? How are they feeling? Are they excited? Are they cautious? How are they feeling?
Well, I would say both. I mean, definitely excited and looking for those opportunities. Sometimes it's, asking if there are connections or opportunities that we can even help them with. But most of the time it's, an awareness of this is what we're looking at. What advice do you have to share? And then, from the cautious side, obviously due diligence is a big part of that. It's a big decision. So you want to make sure that it checks all the boxes of not only strategic growth plans, but what's the cultural fit and geographic fit and what are those opportunities. So, but as Tara said, with as competitive as the space is, I would say that's the piece for banks that are looking to acquire is being sped up, right? Like you have to be on your game because there is definitely competition out there right now, like there hasn't been in recent quarters and definitely recent years here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, speaking of banks and kind of their strategic priorities and how they're growing market share, et cetera, I did have a bank that I wanted to highlight for you all today. This is actually, the bank's called Legends Bank, which is based here in Middle Tennessee. You might be familiar. But they have a separate brand called Her Bank, and that's the one that I want to focus on today because the story is very cool. So recently they released a press release that discusses what Her Bank actually is. You might be able to guess just by the name. It is oriented around, serving women very well and serving female-led businesses. There's kind of a unique target consumer base for them. And obviously there's also some business clients. But one of the statements that they said, I'll let them say it because they say it better than I would. The purpose of her bank is to celebrate, honor, and support women, especially entrepreneurs, by providing financial services and resources through its own female employee base. Brittany Campbell, who's great. I met her. She was at CX25. Legends Bank's Senior Vice President of Marketing and Public Relations said, banking is very much a relationship business. We're empathetic to situations and questions many women have and realize that there are still gaps in financial literacy and confidence when it comes to money and finance. Establishing a trusted relationship with your banker is an essential step to gain knowledge and resources that can create a foundation for financial success. And some of the things that they do, you can go to their website, check it out. Again, it's called Her Bank. They have personalized playlists. They've got a lot of blogs that are about, I think I read the phrase, the money side of women's wellness, as well as female entrepreneurs. So anyway, just wanted to give them a big shout out because that's a very, very unique business approach.
Yeah, I love that. They had me at the custom Spotify playlist that was targeted towards women. So I love their Spotify list on there. And what they're doing now is really cool. While it's narrowed to specific geographical areas right now, they saw a niche need for females. They went for it, understanding that, the female entrepreneurs, they may have differing service needs, business support needs, empowerment around the businesses that they're starting. And I've said it on previous episodes and I'll say it again, niche is back again. So that's exciting. This is one example of, we're going to see far more of that moving forward in the banks that really want to grow and remain relevant, and really narrowing in on where they see their opportunities to serve differently and find a niche.
Yeah. Listen, this kind of stuff makes me so excited. It's brilliant, right? This just makes sense. And I think it's a great example of knowing your market, but also obviously they have some very good resources on their staff that are very good in this area, and trusted advisors and leaders. Like, it just makes sense. And we're starting to see banks innovate in this way. There are several examples that we could talk about, but I don't want to take the focus off of what they're doing because it's great. And the ease at which you can do that now and launch a multi-branded approach through platforms, such like we offer, but others as well. It makes a lot of sense. And, more power to them. I can't wait to see the success because I know they're going to be successful in this effort. And just, cheering you guys on. Well done. Bravo. I'm excited. I geek out over this kind of stuff, but it's fantastic. So thanks for mentioning them, Saxon, and the great work that's going on there.
Yeah, it's all about knowing your customer base, right? Like we talk about it with digital banking, a personalized experience. People like that. So this is just a perfect example of it in both digital and within the branches, the kind of physical experience as well. So big shout out to them. There's actually one more that I wanted to do a quick little congratulations to, which we didn't talk about before this podcast, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Liberty Bank in Connecticut. This is the oldest mutual savings bank in the United States. They just celebrated 200 years. They were founded in 1825. So happy birthday, happy anniversary to you. In order to celebrate that milestone, they donated $200,000 to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So again, giving back to their community, it's awesome.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Props to them.
Fantastic. Well done. Anything that lasts 200 years, I mean, my goodness.
Well, speaking of milestones and developments, we've had several at CSI as well. So Tara, you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on here?
Yeah, of course. So we are 3 to 4 months into Nancy Langer joining as our new CEO, and that has been a wonderful experience for those that have had the pleasure of meeting her. She has been busy. She's been on the road a ton, visiting customers, visiting with future customers, spending time with our owner groups, and she has already added talent to our executive leadership team. You'll see the press soon enough, but as our valued listeners, you always get a peek in advance at some news or most news. But we are very excited to announce Michelle Jacobs joining CSI as our Chief Strategy Officer. So Michelle comes to CSI with more than 3 decades of digital banking, financial technology, and deep consumer and commercial payments experience. So he will be an awesome asset and an influence on our long-term growth strategy, our M&A activity, and both targets and execution, as well as more of our value creation initiatives. So I would say when it comes to the competition that you all face, Michelle gets it. And working with him just over a month now, the focus of this role, his experience in more complex commercial needs, it's exciting to have him on board and work with him. So well done, Nancy.
Yeah, it's very exciting. A lot of exciting things coming down the pike. And, with Nancy too, we really look forward to being able to kind of host her in a future episode of the podcast. We get to talk to her, introduce her to some of the people who haven't already met her. Like Tara already said, she's doing a roadshow. She's meeting customers. She's engaging, figuring out what your most pressing concerns are. But I'm really excited for sometime soon. We'll have her on and we'll be able to ask her our hard-hitting questions.
I love it. So submit those questions away to any of us, and we will make sure that we make those a part of the next episode, hopefully within 60 days.
Yeah, and speaking of the next episode, if you guys would like to, if there's a topic you would like us to cover in the future, don't forget you can always let us know on LinkedIn. You can also learn more about who we are, what we do on csiweb.com. We'll leave this episode here. It's been a great conversation, guys. If you have enjoyed this podcast, feel free to like and subscribe. Like I said, you can also find us on the website. You can find the videos of this on YouTube. We'll be back soon, but until then, keep banking on community.